manner, and often over and over again. Because the conjurations, if you want to call them that, if there is no result after the first conjuration, then you do it again, and you do it again, and you do it again until something happens. So this is the element of sound. Smell is involved by way of the burning of incense. And if you go by Solomonic magic and angel magic and these sorts of things, then the various entities, I'm not even saying that these entities exist as ontological realities. Whatever they are, archetypes, I don't care what you call it, but there's something there. This much I can testify to, unless I'm just totally benighted. Because as you probably have gathered by now, I have done this stuff. So these various entities each have their own particular kind of incense. And you take these incenses and you burn them, and usually in copious quantities, you really smoke up the joint, and you say, well, what's all that good for? Well, first of all, the smell, the sense of smell is involved, but let's say, what does nitrous oxide do when you inhale it? What does laughing gas, so on and so forth? These were all things that have been tried, and not just by hippies, but by great philosophers like William James and others. They alter consciousness, don't they? So similarly, perhaps not as radically, not as quickly, not as dramatically, but the inhaling of various incenses also contributes to the altering of consciousness. The sense of taste is often involved also, because there are magical communions that are often used as a preparatory or adjunct situation. They involve things like wine and bread and salt and other things. Touch is, of course, involved in all of these operations. And let's say, certainly, the psyche, the mind, the integrating intuitive faculties are all involved, because all of these avenues that I have just mentioned, the impressions of what is seen, of what is heard, of what is smelled, of what is tasted, of what is touched, all of these things come into the psyche, into the consciousness, and there contribute to the altering of the mind, bringing the outer reality, let's say, together with the inner reality. And then, often after a good deal of exertion, often after quite a prolonged bit of operation, and to this can be added, and are usually added, all kinds of things that depending on the frame of work of the individual. Astrological influences were always considered as being very important in the times when these were devised. So the magicians would figure certain planetary hours of the day, maybe even the day in terms of its relationship to astrological conditions, because some are considered more favorable than others. And so forth, so that all of these are taken into account. And then there will occur, let's say, a manifestation if things go well. Often the receiver who stands in front of the smoking mirror in the midst of all that incense smoke, let's say, is perhaps the first one or the principal one to undergo a certain kind of altered state of consciousness, to the point that visually and otherwise he or she will receive certain impressions. If these things are well done, and particularly when you have a fairly experienced receiver who has done this before, it's very interesting. A kind of seeming telepathic situation takes place. Most receivers don't hear physically a voice, but they will hear a kind of a voice internally, like ideas that are put in your mind and that are in the nature of a voice, and then you will speak them. There is someone there with a little light writing them down. Often there are questions that can be asked at times of this sort, and once again, the more philosophical, the more mystical the questions, the more, I would say, the more that a higher level the magical operation will proceed. If the questions are reduced to very personal things, well, again, then the results are likely to be more personal. Also, the method of addressing within the mythic structure, let's say, these entities is different as to whether you are dealing with the heavenly, the upper realm, the so-called, let's say, the angelic, or whether you are dealing with the Tartarian realm. The higher beings are asked, very politely supplicated to make their appearance. Tartarian entities, what in the Tartarus is an old Greco-Roman term for the underworld. Now, of course, to the very sort of superstitious Judeo-Christian, that means hell. But that is not the case. No doubt there are ways in trying to deal with demons too, but that's not something that I am either very conversant with or would wish to talk about a lot. But the Tartarian entities are, how can I describe them? They appear to be sort of big, somewhat sleepy beings that nevertheless seem to be quite powerful and know a great deal. But their appearance is almost inevitably reluctant. If you are sensitive at all to these things, when there is a manifestation, you get the feeling that they are not too eager to do this. They're not too eager to cross over in our world, and they are more or less forced to do that by the magical operation. And again, there are in all kinds of categories, depending who you are dealing with. Some of them are quite truthful, can be relied upon, others are a little more deceptive. So it's quite an art to be able to deal with these things. I would say the ultimately important result, however, is that the kind of altered state of consciousness that is achieved in this fashion will bring about an enlargement of the consciousness of the individual operator and possibly the receiver or whoever else is present, and that when the magical operation is over, when you leave that temple or that setting, whatever it is, temporary temple, you will have changed a bit. You will have become a person somewhat more conversant with and more sensitive to this other reality than you have been previously. I don't see any serious objection to this kind of a way of altering consciousness. It has advantages and it has disadvantages, like every kind of method does. Its advantage is that the altering of consciousness is never terribly radical. In fact, that's part of the intentionality of ceremonial magic, as I mentioned before, that you as the operator are always in charge. You never lose consciousness, you never relinquish your consciousness to anything or to anybody. You remain in charge from beginning to end. Now this appeals to some people, and there are problems with that appeal in itself, because people who love to be in charge are sometimes control freaks, as the contemporary lingo has it. And I have certainly known people to be attracted to ceremonial magic who are very much in love with the control, who love to be the big boy with their sword in the hand there in the dark room in the middle of the